So technical difficulties slash my wife calling me has interrupted this video podcast, but that's an okay thing because I got to talk to her for a little bit. But I was in the middle of talking about the beer championship belt when she called. So all you need to know about that is that it was decided in a Flip Cup tournament, which I won, by the way. That championship belt changed hands at least 5 or 6 times that night through various drinking game challenges, and eventually wound up around the waist of a girl named Ellen, who is the last ever beer championship champion. So that it was a one night only thing that eventually never got brought out again. But it was pretty fun that night. It got a lot of people. It made us go. It was about maybe like 8 or 9 people. Then we went through a pony keg of beer in about 45 minutes with it. So I would say it was pretty successful in getting people drunk pretty quickly. So yeah, moral of the story is I was a little bit of a crazy person when I was 21 through 25-ish. I guess 26, 27 a little bit, but not quite as much. So, yeah. And then I settled down a little bit once I moved to Florida. So that was fun. Got to hear all the embarrassing stories from back when we were stupid. So hopefully you enjoyed this little podcast. I know I'm kind of gotten worn out here because I did the first part of the show and then talked to my wife for 45 minutes. And now I'm going to just kind of wrap this up so I can actually release this as something. So I'm coming up near the end of South Carolina. The way that you can tell is they have these billboards along I-95 for something called South of the Border, which is a gimmicky Mexican-themed theme park / restaurant complex that's like really, really racist sounding. And it's in the middle of nowhere. Like the exit is exit 1, or yeah, it's exit 1. So it's technically in North Carolina, I think, but it's the last exit in South Carolina / North Carolina, whichever way you're coming from. And it is like literally the exit is for South of the Border. There's nothing else there. That's what the exit's for. So it's in the middle of nowhere. So it's total tourist trap kind of place. I've never stopped there, never really want to, but that's kind of like my gauge of how close to the border I am. I am 6 miles away from South of the Border, so I'll try to keep this show going until we get out of South Carolina, because that was the original plan. And there's no way I would have been able to follow through with the original plan because I would have run out of stuff to talk about like easily 25 minutes, 30 minutes ago. My soda got extremely warm. I'm actually kind of in the ballpark for looking for a place to stop so I can stretch my legs for a bit. But South of the Border is not the place to do that. What else do we want to talk about? Eventually on this show, we're going to do our Game of Thrones episode. We were supposed to record that last week, but only one of my people I pitched the idea to. I want to have at least 3 people to do a podcast for this show, save for this weird episode, because I wanted to put something out there. I usually want to have 3 people, and only one person would commit to doing the show that last week, because 3 of the 4 people the other people that I had pitched the show to who might be able to be on it, all went to Chicago that weekend. So they were in no mood to record a Game of Thrones podcast when they were busy having fun on vacation in Chicago for the weekend. So that's why that didn't happen when it was supposed to. But I don't know when the Game of Thrones show is going to happen, but Derek is supposed to watch Game of Thrones at some point, and he wanted to be on the episode. So it might not happen until next month. Might try to think of a different episode to do before that. Not sure yet what I'm going to do. I'll have to think about it. This drive through South Carolina is terrible. Absolutely terrible. And the worst part about it is, like, I've gone coming up on 600 miles now. I still have 600 miles more to go before I'm home. So, still got a long, long road ahead of me, which kind of sucks, but... Wait, hold on. I don't know. Wait, I think I'm farther along than that. Okay, I have like 450 more miles to go. I was mistaken. So, hopefully that part of the trip won't go so bad. Once I get into like North Carolina is not much better than South Carolina in terms of this road, the scenicity of the road, but it's a little bit better than South Carolina. And then once you get into Virginia, it gets, you know, a little bit more exciting. And then you get, obviously, then you have DC and Baltimore and that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't call it necessarily exciting, but there's definitely stuff to keep me busy rather than just the droll of the highway here. Going through, I mean, there's like literally nothing. The second time I drove up here, I was driving up in a 26-foot long U-Haul truck, and South Carolina was the place that I decided it was time to like rest for the night. And there's nothing. There's nowhere to stop in South Carolina for the night, other than like a select couple of cities. And every place I called was like full. And the other places that weren't full were really, really shady and didn't have room for a 26-foot moving truck. So I ended up sleeping in the cab of a U-Haul that night in a rest area. It's somewhere in northern Virginia at around 4 o'clock in the morning because there was literally no place to stop. So that's what I did. I brought a pillow with me just in case I did need to pull off to a rest area and rest my head from this trip because I only got like 3.5 hours of sleep last night, and I'm trying to make this, you know, it's 18-hour drive today, so I got a good chunk of it done. It's 2:30 now, coming up on the border of North Carolina and South Carolina. North Kakalaki, home of Ric Flair. Woo! Woo! So, yeah. Now, very much traffic has decided to slow down, mostly because I'm sure they're going to get an eyeful here of south of the border coming up here. If it's safe for me to do so, I'll turn the camera the other way. It's actually not going to be possible to flip the camera, so you'll have to deal with the crappy front-facing camera to do it. But here comes south of the border, and it will be the end of this podcast. So, you see the Sombrero water tower there, and the really weird like mini golf place. There's a Ferris wheel back there, and some restaurants. It looks pretty run down. Doesn't look like there's anyone there today. So I have no idea if it's even open. Well, there's some cars. Okay. So they've got pinball and skee ball and pool. Looks like some go-karts. Fireworks. That's always exciting. So right there, welcome to North Carolina, and welcome to the end of this podcast. So thank you for joining me. Check me out on the web at MikeBeattyVersusTheWorld.blogspot.com, Facebook.com/MikeBeattyVersusTheWorld. You can follow me on Twitter _MikeVersusTheWorld, and you can also subscribe on iTunes by searching for Mike Versus the World on iTunes. Or you could follow me on SoundCloud, which is SoundCloud.com/Mike Versus the World. So until next time, my friends, keep on trucking.